At the inauguration, your friend and mine, Elon Musk, he did his old Nazi salute, not once but twice. He did it once for the cameras and then turned around, did it for the people who could not see him doing it, and then he did it again. It straight up is a Nazi salute. Now you can make the case that he didn't mean it to be one, but he just to show the video footage. The first one, okay, so this is him in comparison to when Hitler did it. All right, it's pretty much the same thing. There's a little differences, but not much. We'll go ahead and show it. All right, so that wasn't a good. I'm gonna show it again, just so y'all can see. Right, start with the hand on the heart and then go out with the arm. That's what Hitler did. Except you can say, well, Hitler wasn't covering his heart. He did kind of like a little. I don't even know what like American salutes are like the straight hand up to the forehead. Hitler was doing like a straight hand to the heart and then out with the Sieg Heil. Whereas Elon Musk, he had his hand covering his heart, right? And just to compare him and Hitler once again, you see here, if it'll pull it up, it shows Hitler doing it the same way as far as hand not covering the heart, kind of like a salute on the heart, and then goes out for the Sieg Heil, right? The same way that Elon Musk did, except Elon Musk covered his heart, right? I show those to show like when modern neo-Nazis do it, right? When neo-Nazis do it, as opposed to the original Nazis, they actually do the covering the heart thing, the way that Elon did, all right? This is literal neo-Nazi groups. I'm showing a side-by-side here so you can see. Cover the heart. They cover the heart and then go out with the Sieg Heil, right? That's exactly what Elon did, all right? Cover the heart, then go for the Sieg Heil. That's exactly what he did. He's, so you can't say he didn't do it because he clearly did it, all right? The question is, did he mean it by that? Like, you can make the case, well, he's kind of retarded and he didn't know what he was doing, right? He thought he was doing something else. He thought he was saying my heart goes out to you, right? Like that, you can make that case. I wouldn't, but you can make that case. I wouldn't make that case because here's what it looks like when Elon is saying my heart goes out to you. He does the little heart gesture over his heart and then he just pushes his hand out. It's not a Sieg Heil, all right? It's not even remotely close to what he did at the inauguration, all right? He knows. The same people will say the same people who say that he didn't mean it as a Sieg Heil are the same people who say he's one of the smartest people in the world, right? If he's one of the smartest people in the world, he knows the difference in a Sieg Heil and saying my heart goes out to you, right? He's not stupid. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's one of the smartest people in the world. Depends on how you define that, but he's definitely not stupid, all right? He knew exactly what he was doing, and this is what it looks like when he does my heart goes out to you, right? He does the little heart thing, and then he like pushes it out, right? That's not a Sieg Heil. He knows the difference, all right? So that's a dumb case to make that he didn't know what he was doing, all right? He knew exactly what he was doing. So, and one of the things that he's doing, not just in America, because in America, I don't know if y'all realize this, but the parties here in America, there's only two main parties. There are other political parties, but they don't make a difference. The only two main parties here in the U.S. are the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, all right? And over the years, in the past 10 years, they become far more polarized. As far as the Democratic Party, the voter base of the Democratic Party has become far left. Whereas, the Democratic establishment do not want to be far left. They want to be more centrist. But the Republican Party, as far as the voter base and the people behind the scenes who are actually running the show, they become more far right. All right? And it's not just like that in America. It's like that all around the world, where you see the rise of extremist political parties. That's what's been going on around the world. All right? So not only did Elon Musk heavily fund and support the far right party here in America, the Republican Party, but he also has done the same thing in other countries. All right, it's not just in America where he's done this. All right, he's pushing for these far right powers in a lot of different countries, mainly European countries. All right. So Germany's leader says Musk's support for European far right is completely unacceptable, and we're going to get into that. How Elon Musk is, funding all these far right parties, especially in Europe, and how you really can tell who someone is by who they associate themselves with. All right, and I'll show you this real quick. This scripture in the book of Ecclesiasticus, and I didn't even have this in mind, but it goes along with what I'm talking about. Ecclesiasticus chapter 13, going into starting with what excuse me, starting with verse 15. It says, "Every beast loveth his like, and every man loveth his neighbor. All flesh consorteth according to kind, and a man will cleave to his like." All right, so the people you associate yourself with, that's the people who you are like. And you would not associate with them unless you were like them on some sort of level. All right, so you can tell who a man is by his friends, right? You can tell who a person is by who they associate themselves with. All right, so it says, "What fellowship have the wolf with the lamb? So the sinner with the godly," right? Because in the example of a wolf with a lamb, lambs are not going to hang out with wolves, not knowingly, right? A wolf will come up in the pasture and then they'll all run away from him, right? And so likewise, the sinner with the godly. So, and switching over to the humans as far as sinners with the godly, there's only two ways that situation can go when a sinner is amongst the godly. Either the sinner will change and become one of the godly, or the sinner will spread his sin among the godly, and now you have a bunch of sinners. All right, that's the only way it's going to go. But you're not going to have somebody who is completely different than the people they associate themselves with. Not for long. That's not how it works. All right. So it says, "What agreement is there between the hyena and the dog? And what peace between the rich and the poor?" Right? The rich people don't associate themselves with the poor. And likewise, the poor cannot be in the circles of the rich. All right? So it says, "As the wild ass is the lion's prey in the wilderness, so the rich eat up the poor." All right? "As the proud hate humility, so doth the rich abhor the poor." And that's what you see here in America. But we'll jump back to this Associated Press article about what's going on in Germany politically. All right. So it says, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said Friday that Elon Musk's support for the far right in Europe is completely unacceptable, adding to his previous criticism of Musk's interventions in the German election campaign. All right. So Musk has had some interventions in the German election campaign, specifically what is about to get into here. Musk has said over the past month that only the far right party Alternative for Germany, or AfD, right, the Alternative for Deutschland. The Germans don't call themselves Germany; they call themselves Deutschland. Can save Germany, right? So that's what he said. The AfD are the only ones that can save Germany. So what the AfD has been running on is a very anti-immigration stance. Does that sound familiar? All right, because it should. That's the same stance that the Republicans have taken, a very anti-immigration stance. All right. Last week, the tech billionaire live streamed on his social media platform X a chat with Alice Weidel, the party's candidate for chancellor in Germany's February 23rd election, amplifying its message ahead of the vote. Right, so he's highly endorsing the AfD, all right, this far right party in Germany. His interest in Germany and politics elsewhere in Europe, after he poured money and energy into helping Donald Trump, right? As I said, he poured money, right? It was lots and lots of money he put into the Trump campaign. When the U.S. election has set off alarm bells among politicians across the continent. The Tesla and SpaceX chief executive also has demanded the release of jailed UK anti-Islam extremist Tommy Robinson and called British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government tyrannical, claiming Starmer should be in prison. Right, so he's highly against the current British government because they arrested a anti-Islam extremist, as this article calls him, Tommy Robinson. I don't know much about Tommy Robinson. It's not really the point. He's anti-immigration though, right? And that's a big movement going throughout Britain right now as well. Like they had anti-immigration whites, Edomites, out in the streets of Britain here recently protesting the British government. All right, this was a couple months ago. Schultz has said it's important to stay cool over personal attacks, but that Germany's way forward will not be decided by the owners of social media channels, but by German voters. And see, that's the thing about Elon Musk on the X platform, is that one of the things, and I'm not even getting into all the different things that he said on there, that he's done on there, but he's brought back a lot of, Nazis, like self-proclaimed Nazis and white nationalists who were banned from the platform. He's brought a lot of them back, all right, in the guise of free speech, right? Asked on Friday about Musk's interventions, he said it's important to criticize the right thing. What we must criticize is not that a billionaire or a billionaire from other countries in a global world expresses his opinion, but what he says. And even that, let's get into the rest of this quote and then we'll talk about that. Schultz said at a news conference, he supports the extreme right throughout Europe, in Britain, in Germany, in many, many other countries. And that is something that is completely unacceptable, right? So he's saying, well, we shouldn't silence billionaires. We should hear them out, except this one guy, right? So like even that, this guy, this Schultz guy, I'm not going to pretend like he's like the best guy in the world. Obviously, he's probably done some messed up things to get to where he's at, like all politicians. But the point is that he's trying to make is that, oh, it's bad that Elon Musk is extremely far right, that he's, white nationalist, white supremacist, Nazi, whatever you want to say. I mean, he did the Nazi salute. But this idea that is specifically in Europe and America, but America being the dominant world power, that billionaires and especially the owners of these social media platforms can pretty much assert their will, however they want to assert it, right? Because they have the money to do so. And in this current world that we live in, the richest, most wealthy people, get to run the world by hook or by crook, so to speak. He said, this endangers the democratic development of Europe. It endangers our community, and that must be criticized, Schultz said. Polls show AfD in second place ahead of the election with support of about 20%. But Vidal has no realistic chance of becoming chancellor because other parties refuse to work with the party, right? So the Germans said, look, we can't go back to being Nazis. They said, look, we got shut down by doing that. We can't do that again. But anyway, it says center-right opposition leader Friedrich Merz also has criticized Musk's endorsement of AfD. Merz's union bloc leads polls, and he is the favorite to become Germany's next leader, right? So we'll see how that goes. Honestly, I don't care too much about the German election. I don't think they hold much power worldwide. They were pretty much shut down after World War II, and really after World War I, and that kind of led to World War II. But the point is Elon Musk antics. All right, so here's some British Pakistanis' position on Musk. All right, he said this guy's dangerous. This guy's dangerous. British Pakistanis fear Musk is stoking racism. All right. So it says, Azmat Khan, a British Pakistani driver, is not usually much of a worrier, but recently as he drives his cab at night through London's ice-cold streets, he has become increasingly anxious. All right, and last week we actually talked about some of the anxiety and fear amongst the Israelites, the Iskarites specifically over here in America. Right, they were worried about how things were shaping up, how things about to go down. All right. So we see that sentiment. Now, I don't know about this specific Ahmad Khan, his heritage, whether he's an Israelite or not. Not all Pakistanis are Israelites, but there's definitely Israelites over there. The Yusufzai, just to name one group. All right. So it said, we've just had a summer of unrest with misinformation fueling far-right activists in this country, partly thanks to X, and now he's back, fanning the flames again. Khan said of the South African-born tech billionaire Elon Musk. So that's important. That's important that he was born in South Africa. That will kind of help you understand who this guy is. All right. So he was born in Pretoria, South Africa in 1971. The apartheid regime in South Africa did not end until the year 1990. All right. So if you don't know about apartheid South Africa, it's very, very similar and pretty much equal to the United States Jim Crow era that ended in the late 60s. All right. It's pretty much the same exact thing, except it lasted up until 1990. All right. So that's where Elon Musk comes from, a segregationist South Africa. That's where he comes from. All right. Apartheid South Africa. So it's not that much of a stretch to say he came from apartheid South Africa and he still holds those beliefs of the whites who were in apartheid South Africa. All right. It's not that much of a stretch. All right. So it said South African-born tech billionaire Elon Musk, who has used the social media platform he owns to rage about British sexual abuse convicts of Pakistani heritage. This guy's dangerous, and yes, I'm worried. Khan, a 35-year-old father of three, told Al Jazeera, sharing his fears of collective punishment. Right. So, and instead of just punishing these Pakistani individuals, he's worried that just because there's a few bad individuals who've done criminal things, that they're going to come down on all, immigrants, on all Pakistanis in Britain. Our community has seen through this kind of scapegoating before, but with Musk's platform and resources, the threat has reached an entirely new level. Khan tunes into the pulse of the city through his passengers and says he has noticed a troubling shift in backseat conversations. Some passengers have talked about what they call the threats Muslims and migrants bring to the UK. That type of discourse could be linked to Musk's inflammatory comments about historic cases of child sex abuse, Khan believes. That was a horrific time when the news first came out more than a decade ago, Khan said. But to bring it up again now while it's being dealt with and to finger point at Pakistani Muslims specifically, it's obvious he's trying to cause trouble, a move towards the civil war he was trying to stir up last summer. You see that right there? So again, it's not just in the U.S. where the political beliefs and political parties have been so polarized. That's all around the world that's happening, all right? Everyone is, and I talked about this a bit a few weeks ago, how most of the countries around the world are becoming seditious, all right? It's a bunch of civil unrest going on. Now, a lot of these places that's been going on for decades, but in some places it used to be stable, right? Like in Europe and the US. But now all that facade is going away too. All that's crumbling down as well. All right? We are in the last days. All right? In August last year, after 3 girls were killed in Southport, online agitators blamed the attack on a Muslim migrant. But 18-year-old Axel Rudakubana, who was sentenced this week to 52 years in jail, was neither a Muslim nor a migrant. Right? So with Axel Rudakubana, I don't know who that is. Kind of sounds like a Hindu, if I'm being honest. The false claims led to widespread riots. Responding to footage posted on X of the riots, Musk posted, "Civil war is inevitable." All right. So how is he going to profit off of this? I guess time will tell. In recent weeks, Musk has turned his focus to child sexual assault cases that took place over several decades in northern English towns such as Rockdale, Oldham, and Telford, as well as sharing grim details of the cases involving British Pakistani men, several of them taxi drivers. Musk has called for a new national inquiry, amplified posts that suggest dual national convicts should be stripped of their UK citizenship, and targeted Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour government, accusing politicians of a cover-up, which is pretty wild. But again, the anti-immigration sentiment that he's pushing in all predominantly white countries, it seems. While some child sex abuse cases have involved several men of British Pakistani origin, it is impossible to suggest British Pakistanis are more likely to commit the crime, right? Because that would be racist. And more than likely just not true if you parse through the data. I have not, maybe there is a more likelihood, but I doubt it. Shabna Begum, head of Runnymede Trust, a racial equality think tank, said there was no conclusive evidence which demonstrates an ethnic disproportionality in those who perpetuate this violence, right? Because, I mean, that only makes sense. A UK Home Office report in 2020 supported this view, right? So the people who have pierced through the data and have studied things like this said there's no link between these British Pakistanis and these, assault cases. There just isn't. And Musk is just perpetuating this myth to cause civil unrest and an anti-immigration sentiment. All right? By propelling misinformation, he's creating mistrust and a volatile environment, Begum said. It purposefully stokes fear, prejudice, and division with no care for the victims and survivors of this violence, and makes no effort to address the real problems of misogyny and child sex abuse. All right, so yeah, and you see this a lot with, I guess, right-wing people. They care more about the punishment of the people who did the crime than like trying to help the people who got affected by the victims of the crime, and trying to eliminate things like this in the future, right? They think the punishment is going to be a deterrent when that's hardly ever the case. The punishment is not really ever a deterrent. And even in the scriptures, like when you see like capital punishment, right? Because there were different things, like we just talked about it this past week when it comes to learning the word, and we was going into the law of Moses. When it talks about, and again, I don't know, this stream is probably going to be taken down immediately just because all the things that I'm saying here as far as like white supremacy, Nazism. So I'll just go ahead and say it. The Bible describes rape to be like murder, right? So the sentence of, a rapist is they get put to death. That's not even supposed to be like a deterrent. That's supposed to like kill all the evil people. Like that's the ultimate goal of God's kingdom, is to destroy the wicked and uphold the righteous. Like that's the whole point of the judgment of God. That's not really what they're into, because like the far right, they're not really interested in God, and we're going to see that later. They're more interested in accumulating wealth for themselves, perpetuating their own justifications for their crimes, while harshly punishing all their political opponents and things like that. But this next section of the article said he's interested in scapegoating one community. According to the Center of Expertise on Child Sexual Abuse, the CSA Center, in 2022, 83% of defendants proceeded against for child sex abuse offenses were white, while 2% were Pakistani backgrounds. Now, I don't know like the demographic percentages in the UK. Maybe that's completely representative of their racial demographics. I'm not quite sure. But it seems like that's actually pointing out that like white people are more likely to do these crimes. It may be like that's just the racial demographics where it's 83% white and 2% Pakistani. I'm not quite sure. The center used data from children's social care, policing, criminal justice, and health departments to build its report, but cautioned that the overrepresentation of white defendants is likely to be related to the overall under-identification of child sex abuse in minority ethnic communities, right? So it could just be that they don't report children of minorities who are being abused. It could be that. It could be that as well. But Musk seems intent on painting a distorted picture, instead doubling down on a divisive and misleading narrative, said Khan. And yeah, that's pretty obvious. When you see that he had the perfect Nazi salute, the way that neo-Nazis do it, not necessarily the way that Hitler did it, but the way that neo-Nazis do it, he did the exact same thing that they do, right? Hand cover the heart and then out with the Sieg Heil. He has before said, "My heart goes out to you," but he did not do it in that way, the way that he did at the inauguration, right? And you could say he's a little retarded, so he didn't know what he was doing. But you can't also then say that he's one of the smartest people in the world. That's not; those are two contradictory statements. But looking at the things he does and the people he associates himself with, as far as the political parties he supports, and his background, how he grew up, and we're about to get into something else as well, it would seem he has white supremacist ties, Nazi ties, whatever you want to call it, all right? So, it says he regularly rails against Prime Minister Starmer, a former chief prosecutor and head of the Crown Prosecution Service. Starmer was complicit in the rape of Britain, quote unquote, when he was head of Crown Prosecution for 6 years, Musk has posted on X. The government, just using that language, while also saying he's trying to protect people who have been raped, that's just like so hypocritical. Not to say that, you can't say the word rape if you, defend rapists, or rather if you defend victims of rape, excuse me. But the way that he used that word in that context, it's odd to see how proud the wicked are, and we're gonna get into that a little later. Just like they have no self-awareness at all, right? Because he's talking about defending the victims of rape, yet he calls immigration the rape of Britain. Like, come on, man. Like, that's at the very least very insensitive, but at the worst, he's using provocatory language to, sow dissent among the people. The government has repeatedly dismissed calls for a second national inquiry. However, last week it announced a plan to fund 5 new local inquiries, including one in Oldham. The UK's 7-year national inquiry into child sexual abuse was one of the most comprehensive investigations of its kind. Its final report, published in October of 2022, drew on extensive research, multiple investigations, and victim testimonies. The report revealed systemic failures in protecting children and made powerful recommendations to improve safeguarding and accountability. Right? So this, from what this article is saying, that investigation that they made from 2014 to 2021 was a good investigation and led to some beneficial outcomes. Now, I don't know personally, but that's what they're saying in this article. Even so, critics argue that the true scale of abuse committed was neglected for years. And it has been, as far as, especially in the U.S., like there's a lot of human trafficking has been going on for a long time. And Republicans will bring this up. The right-wing people will bring this up, but then say, oh, we need to deport all the Mexicans, when that's not really who's been doing the sex trafficking here in the U.S. It's not usually the immigrants. It's usually the people native born. It's your wealthy elite people who can get away with it. It's your people who had ties with Epstein, for example. It's your people who had ties with Diddy, for example. The real issue is creating a society that protects young girls from predators of any background concept. But Musk isn't interested in solutions. He's interested in scapegoating one community. It doesn't bode well for Britain or even Europe, where he's also been meddling, right? So that's what we just read with the German chancellor mentioning that as well. I don't know if we'll read all this. We'll go ahead and start reading and see where we get to, because there's another thing I want to touch on after this. In Rockdale, where British Pakistanis make up about 14% of the population, some are wary of being vilified. Most of us are working class, honest folk, said Mohammed Shiraz, a 48-year-old Rockdalian, as he described himself. Born and raised in a town, he added, we're tired of being portrayed as troublesome Muslims or brown men to be scared of. Yes, some men committed disgusting crimes, but they were as far from Islam as you can get. Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm not a big proponent of Islam, and even Muhammad was a pedophile, so look into that on your own time. They are criminals and should be treated as criminals. They don't represent us in any way. Shiraz, who has for years, when I say Muhammad, I'm not talking about Muhammad Shiraz here. I'm talking about their false prophet. But anyway, Shiraz, who has for years run the Army of Kindness, a soup kitchen in Rockdale that serves people of all backgrounds, views Musk's interventions as dangerous, right? The same way the German chancellor said, hey, this is dangerous to have this guy meddling in our politics. He's not even from here, all right? The people of Britain, some of them at least, feel the same way, all right? It's like he's sowing the seeds for some major anti-Muslim war, he said. I mean, here in the U.S., it's not an anti-Muslim war that he's trying to stoke. It's an anti-Mexican war that he's trying to stoke. So it's just an overall anti-immigration sentiment, all right? Whether it be the immigration into Europe or whether it be the immigration into the United States, he's sowing seeds of anti-immigration sentiment all around the world, all right? Rockdale remained calm over the summer as xenophobic riots erupted elsewhere, a sense of peace that Shiraz attributed to the resilience of the British public. Remember what stopped those riots from escalating? People of all races and backgrounds stood together against the right-wing thuggery that Musk seems determined to support. Musk's endorsement of the jailed far-right activist Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon, better known as Tommy Robinson, has been particularly contentious. A figure synonymous with anti-Muslim sentiment in the UK, Robinson is currently serving a prison sentence for contempt of court. Musk has called for Robinson's release and portrayed him as a champion of free speech, drawing widespread condemnation, right? So all these, like white supremacists or Nazis or whoever, they all say, hey, you protect our freedom of speech, right? You should protect our freedom of speech. When they want to round people up and ship them out of the country, or they want to round people up and kill them, right? What kind of speech are you trying to protect? Just your own? And that's really everyone, by the way. No one really cares about free speech, absolutely. Nobody really cares about protecting others' freedom of speech. Everyone only really cares about protecting their own freedom of speech, right? Because if you talk to leftists, they say you should not allow Nazis to have their freedom of speech. If you talk to Nazis, they will say, yeah, you should protect our freedom of speech, but we don't care about having the communists have their freedom of speech, right? Nobody really cares about the other side's freedom of speech. Not really. It's very vague and very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very subjective as to what is and what is not freedom of speech. The Bible does not allow freedom of speech at all, by the way. All right? It tells you, don't say this, don't do that. Like, the freedoms thing, that's a libertarian mindset. That's an enlightenment mindset. It's a very European mindset. It's not what anything in the Bible ever endorses. All right? It never says that, right? God said, don't make mention of other gods. Religious freedoms were never a thing in the Bible either. Like, all this idea of freedom of speech and freedom of expression, freedom of religion, that's not a godly thing. It never was. All right, that's a secular invention. It's not anything that God supports, just to put it plainly. All right. So, I'll go ahead and read the rest of this. It's just a few more sentences. Nigel Farage and Richard Tice, who lead the Populist Reform Party that Musk has previously flirted with, have distanced themselves from Robinson. Even so, Musk's rhetoric has emboldened fringe movements. His posts echo the language of far-right activists, conflating cultural integration with a rise in criminality. His influence as one of the world's richest men and an advisor to the new United States administration led by President Donald Trump worries Shiraz. Right, because they know, hey, if Elon got Trump's ear and Trump's now the president of the United States, hey, we're all screwed. Because the U.S. runs everything, and everything around the world is about to get jacked up, right? They already know this. Tommy Robinson has been to Rockdale before in 2011 to stoke up hate, divide, and conquer. It didn't work. The community stood together to ensure our town didn't go up in flames. But now, Mr. Tesla is backing those folks. Who knows what'll happen next, right? People are worried. Thinly veiled attempt to radicalize the gendered issue. Beckham at Runningmead described Musk's rhetoric as dangerous and irresponsible, especially following the worst racist rioting the UK has seen in generations, right? And that's what I was talking about earlier. Victims of child sexual abuse deserve justice, and of course, all children must be protected from sexual violence and exploitation. That goes without saying, Beckham said. What we are witnessing are powerful men exploiting horrendous sexual violence against women to score political points and push their own agendas. I thought it was against children. What do you mean against women? Focusing on Pakistani Muslim men and advocating for deportation or citizenship stripping is a thinly veiled attempt to racialize what is fundamentally a gendered issue. Right? It is mostly men doing this. Like, you may find like maybe in 1 out of 100 cases of child sexual abuse will it be a woman doing it to like a young boy or a young girl, but usually it's men. It's men doing it. It's wicked men, evil men doing this. All right. As the UK grapples with Musk's growing influence, unity should be the strongest defense against a divisive agenda, said Ross. We faced hate before and we'll face it again, but we're British. We'll stand together against this too. All right. So that's what's going on in Britain. I do just want to touch on because so we're trying to figure out, the point of me going into all this is we're trying to figure out if Elon really meant the Sikh Heil, right? Maybe he meant it as a Sikh Heil, but it was just a troll, right? It's not his actual beliefs. We pretty much already disproved that it was, my heart goes out to you, because when he said that in the past and gestured that way in the past, it was not a Sikh Heil like it was this time, right? Like it was at the inauguration this past week. All right, so we see that he's not only using his platform that he bought to interfere in the UK politics, but he's also sitting down and also using his platform to promote far-right groups in Germany and elsewhere throughout Europe. All right. So we saw that he grew, we read that he grew up in apartheid South Africa. All right. So what about here in the U.S.? All right. Is there any evidence of him supporting, racist and Nazi stuff here in the U.S.? And here we see, this is from last year. No, actually, this is from 2023. All right. It says the EEOC, which is the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, sues Tesla for racial harassment and retaliation. And we may have talked about this at the time. I'm not quite sure, but it may have slipped your mind. Where it says electric car maker Tesla Inc. violated federal law by tolerating widespread and ongoing racial harassment of its black employees and by subjecting some of these workers to retaliation for opposing the harassment. The EEOC charged in a lawsuit filed today, right? So that would have been in September of 2023. According to the EEOC suit, since at least 2015 to the present, black employees at Tesla's Fremont, California manufacturing facilities have routinely endured racial abuse, pervasive stereotyping, and hostility, as well as epithets such as variations of the N-word, monkey, boy, and black bitch. Slurs were used casually and openly in high-traffic areas and at worker hubs. Black employees regularly encountered graffiti, including variations of the N-word, swastikas, threats, and nooses on desk and other equipment, in bathroom stalls, within elevators, and even on new vehicles rolling off the production line, the EEOC said. And we'll go ahead and read this whole thing. But, no, we won't read this whole thing. We kind of got to the point already as far as like, this was happening in Tesla facilities. And I'll read this next little paragraph, but we'll end it at that. The EEOC's investigation also found that those who raised objections to racial hostility suffered various forms of retaliation, including terminations, changes in job duties, transfers, and other adverse employment actions, right? So the people who experienced this and reported it to their supervisors, they are the ones who face retaliation. They're the ones who got fired. They're the ones who got demoted. All right, they're the ones who got transferred. All right. So again, this is in Elon Musk facilities. These were people that he hired. I ain't even talking about, the people on the line. Some, factories, if they're big, you can't really control everybody. But the supervisors who allow this type of stuff and at the very least tolerated it, they're people who he hired. They're people who represent his company. Not just normal line workers, but supervisors, managers, management, executives even. All right? They have this same white supremacist Nazi mentality. All right? And by the way, this is not new. All right? We pretty much are back to where we were like 90 years ago. as far as the American business owners and people who do business heavily in America going hand in hand with Nazis. That's how it was back then too. All right, so this isn't the actual book, but this is the name of a book here, The American Axis. This is on the Smithsonian website, all right, and they cataloged this book, and this is just a summary of it, all right. They said, hey, this is important history, right? So The American Axis, Henry Ford, Charles Lindbergh, and the Rise of the Third Reich by Max Wallace, all right? So we're going to read this summary here. It says, Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh have long been exalted as two of the greatest American icons of the 20th century. From Max Wallace comes revelations about the poisonous effect these two so-called American heroes had on Western democracy. In his wide-ranging investigation, Wallace goes further than any other historian to expose how Ford and Lindbergh, acting in league with the Nazis, almost brought democratic Europe to the verge of extinction, right? Isn't that what the modern German chancellor said? He said, look, this can be very dangerous to European democracies. All right? With unprecedented access to declassified FBI and military intelligence files, Wallace reveals how the close friendship and ideological bond between automotive pioneer Ford and aviator Lindbergh culminated in an abuse of power that helped strengthen Hitler's regime and undermine the Allied war effort. You say it right there, because these people were basically working with both sides, right? They were working with the Allied powers and the Axis powers, all right? Because they didn't care, all right? The American business owners, they didn't care if you were Nazis. They didn't care if you were white supremacists. They were too, all right? And this is specifically just talking about Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh, but we're going to see even after this with Prescott Bush, it was not just them. It was pretty much all American businesses that were doing this, all right? So it says, Wallace traces Henry Ford's ties to Nazi Germany back as far as the 20s, presenting compelling evidence of a financial paper trail providing that Ford subsidized the rise to power of Adolf Hitler, who described Ford as my inspiration, right? So not only was Henry Ford, in business with the Nazis, he's the one who funded them from the jump. He's the reason why they got off the ground in the first place. One of the reasons, all right? For the first time, the genesis of Ford's notorious anti-Semitism is uncovered. The American Axis proves that Ford's private secretary and lifelong confidant was a German spy who channeled his employer's Jew-baiting crusades to further the cause of the Third Reich. So Henry Ford heard of this, young coming political party in Germany called the National Socialist Party. He said, okay, they hate Jewish people? Me too. Let's work together, right? That was Henry Ford's mentality. This guy who is championed as like an American hero, all right? This is how he was. He was a Nazi. That's who he was, all right? So, for the case of the Third Reich, Lindbergh's own anti-Semitism and white supremacist views captured the attention of the Nazis, who soon manipulated him in their clandestine fifth column efforts, right? So fifth column is just a phrase, because I had to look it up, I didn't know what it meant. But fifth column is just a phrase for basically traitor. People on the opposing side, like when you go to war and you have an opposing country, but there are people within the country who may believe the same thing as the enemy of that country, right? They're not a patriot, they're a traitor, right? Like that's what fifth column is targeting the traitors. It's like what Michael Aquino later coined as like mind war. That's fifth column, basically. As the first unauthorized biographer to gain access to the Lindbergh archives, Wallace paints a substantially more chilling portrait of Lindbergh's pre-war activities than any previous historian, and produces new evidence that the Nazis secretly plotted to install Lindbergh as the leader of the movement to keep America out of World War II. You see that right there? Because the Germans knew, the Nazis knew, hey, we want to be allies with America. We do not want to be the enemies of America, because if we are the enemies of America, then America will come through and make a difference as far as like, they'll end the war, right? We can't overcome America. Like, they already knew that. All right, so they wanted to, work with these American businessmen, and these American businessmen said, hey, we want to work with these Nazis because they were so ideologically aligned. In fact, a lot of the things the Nazis did within Germany, as far as like the concentration camps and things like that, a lot of that, and the laws like against minorities, a lot of that was based on like Jim Crow stuff. all right? The black codes, right? A lot of that was based on how America treated its minorities, all right? The Nazis and the Americans were linked like that. I'm telling you, they were tied like the whole way. And if you look into, because I was looking into this, trying to find some articles on this, I had to specifically look for, okay, Henry Ford's relationship with the Nazis, okay, Prescott Bush's relationship with the Nazis. Because when you look up like the U.S. relations with Nazi Germany, you're just going to find stuff like, America didn't initially enter the war because they didn't want to, further the conflict, or they didn't want to escalate the conflict. That's BS. That's BS. Maybe that was like FDR's mentality, but I don't even think that. All right, because even FDR was he snubbed Jesse Owens. You know what I mean? He was he was a white supremacist just like everyone else back then. All right, but that it's all. If you look into it, like from what the U.S. government puts out about World War II, what everybody else puts out about World War II, if it's from American sources, it's usually very propaganda for America, saying, they always hated the Nazis, but they just didn't enter the war initially because of A, B, and C, right? Whereas when you really actually look into it, like we're getting into right now, when it comes to American businessmen's relationship with the Nazis, they didn't want to enter the war against Germany because their beliefs lined up almost perfectly. The only reason why America entered the war against the Axis powers is because they wanted to fight against Japan. And Japan and Germany were allied, so they said, well, I guess we'll get on the allied side with Britain and France. Right? We'll declare war on Germany because we already declared war on Japan. All right? That's what it was really about. America was more concerned about the war in the Pacific than they were about the one in Europe. They never really cared about defeating the Nazis. As we see here, a lot of the American businessmen were actually Nazis. All right? So, here we go. The most controversial corporate investigation since IBM and the Holocaust, right? So again, it's not just Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh. It's also the IBM Corporation, which they still have like commercials today that you might see. They work with Dell and Microsoft and like all these like big tech companies. IBM actually produces a lot of the tech, like it innovates a lot of the tech that we enjoy and use today. All right. So it's not just a couple individuals. Like all American businesses, if they were like big business, if they did worldwide global trade at the time, they worked with the Nazis. They enjoyed working with the Nazis, and their political beliefs lined up. All right. So it says IBM and the Holocaust. It says this is the most controversial corporate investigation since IBM and the Holocaust. The book reveals that the Ford Motor Company's military and political complicity in the Third Reich War effort was considerably stronger than the company has acknowledged, and that a U.S. Army post-war investigation concluded that the company had become an arsenal of Nazism. You see that right there, them Fords, them all-American Fords, they were an arsenal of Nazism at the time, all right, because of their founder, Henry Ford, dealing majorly with the Nazis, all right? Wallace disputes a recent internal investigation into the use of slave labor at Ford's German plant during World War II, which company officials claimed as a vindication of its wartime activities, and reveals that corporate president Edsel Ford was about to be indicted by the U.S. government for trading with the enemy at the time of his 1943 death. And that's what the book jacket says, all right? So, again, it's not only Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh, all right? But Prescott Bush, I'll just read this real quick, the summary. It says that he was an American investment banker, politician, and patriarch of a family that created a Republican political dynasty. Bush represented Connecticut in the U.S. Senate from 52 to 63. His son, George H.W., and grandson, George W. Bush, were respectively the 41st and 43rd presidents of the United States. All right. So Prescott Bush, I went into him specifically because this is on Britannica, by the way. The last website I was on was Smithsonian. That's a reputable source. I'm on Britannica here, all right? The Encyclopedia Britannica, all right? So these are like the most reputable sources that you can have if you believe in, well, this source is not to be trusted and that source. I specifically picked these websites for a reason because these are considered to be reputable sources. All right, so it says business career with Brown Brothers Harriman and Co. and association with Nazi Germany, all right? So it says after the war, so this is after World War I, it's talking about when it says after the war. Bush began working for a St. Louis-based wholesale hardware business in St. Louis. He met and courted Dorothy Walker. Her father, George Herbert Walker, had founded one of the Midwest's first investment banks and became even wealthier heading up the Wall Street Investment firm founded by brothers Roland and W. Averill Harriman, with money inherited from their father, railroad magnate Edward Henry Harriman. All right, in 1921, Bush married Dorothy. He then started a company that manufactured rubber flooring, which he soon sold, but agreed to continue to manage and moving to Massachusetts to do so. In 1925, he took a position with New York City-based United States Rubber and relocated to Greenwich, Connecticut, or Greenwich, how you pronounce that, where he would establish his family. In 26, he joined his father-in-law's investment firm, W.A. Harriman and Company, which in 1930 merged with the British American banking firm Brown Brothers, right? Okay, so Bush became managing partner in the new company, Brown Brothers Harriman and Co. Now, this is still an investment company, still a private investment company, still a banking company, is BBH, all right? Brown Brothers Harriman and Co. BBH's association with the German industrialist Fritz Thyssen, which continued even after the start of World War II, would taint its reputation. Similarly infamous was the Union Banking Corporation, a BBH asset managed by Bush that transferred funds, bonds, gold, coal, and oil, and steel to Nazi Germany during its military buildup, right? So it wasn't just, oh, they kind of had some dealings with them here or there. Like, no, they did a lot of business with Nazi Germany, right? So they sent funds, bonds, gold, coal, oil, and steel, right? They did all sorts of business with Nazi Germany, all right? In 1942, the U.S. government, under the Trading with the Enemy Act, seized UBC and other German-affiliated BBH assets, but Bush was never found guilty of a crime. And the affair would neither prevent Averill Harriman from becoming the Democratic governor of New York, nor have lasting political ramifications for Bush or his progeny. Right? So the UBC, specifically Union Banking Corporation, was shut down. All right? But some of the assets of BBH as well. But they let the person who founded the Harriman become, or the Harriman side of the corporation, become governor of New York. And they let Bush and his kids get into politics as well. They let him be a senator. They let both his kids become president. All right? They let Jeb Bush be governor of Florida. You see what I'm saying? So and again, this goes way deeper than, I'm just touching surface level stuff here, and I've been going on this for a minute now, but I'm just touching surface level stuff. All right, look into Project Paperclip, sometimes called Operation Paperclip. All right, the U.S. literally took Nazi scientists and brought them back over here, other Nazis as well, not just scientists, brought them back over here to the U.S. and instilled them in government positions. All right, this is just history. The U.S. and the Nazis have always been aligned. Now Musk he's just so proud that he went mask off with it. All right, he's just showing you, and he's signaling to those people out there who have this same belief, who are neo-Nazis like he is, who are white supremacists like he is, like, hey, look, we out you, basically. All right. So with that, let's get into some scriptures, because I've been going on this for a long time. So first of all, I got this here in Psalms 50, but we're going to touch that here in a second, because the Nazis said they were Catholic, right? The Pope aligned with the Nazis at the time. The Pope of the time, I should say, aligned with the Nazis, all right? But this is what it all goes back to. It all goes back to Ezekiel 35 and verse 5. I think it's verse 5. Let's see. Yes. All right, so if you don't know about Ezekiel 35, As it says in verse 1, moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, verse 2, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it. All right, so Mount Seir is Edom, is Esau. All right, so I'll just get that real quick in Genesis 36, just to show what Mount Seir is. Genesis 36, I think it's verse 8. Is it verse 8? Yes. It says, thus dwelt Esau in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. Right? So it's three words for the same people. Mount Seir, Esau, and Edom. That's your so-called Caucasians or Europeans who came and established European colonial empires, which later became America. All right, and South Africa for that. To that same point. So that would be Musk. He is showing that he is an Edomite. All right. So verse 5, it says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred, a never-ending hatred, and hast shed the blood of the children of Israel by force of the sword in the time of their calamity, and the time that their iniquity had an end. Therefore, as I live, saith the Lord God, I will prepare thee unto blood, and blood shall pursue thee. Sith thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. Right? So Musk is literally still stoking the flames of this. All right? Still trying to spark civil unrest so that people will kill others. All right? He's literally saying civil war is inevitable. He wants civil war. He wants people to start fighting each other. He wants the Edomites to shed the blood of Israelites and all non-whites. All right? So, Daniel 8 as well. I'll go to Daniel 8 real quick. Now, Daniel 8 is historically talking about like Alexander and later Antiochus Epiphanes, at least the verses that we're going to cover. But it's still the same mentality that is in the Edomites, the same that was in Alexander the Greek, all right? The son of Philip the Macedonian. In Daniel 8 and what is it, verse 5? No, it's actually verse 7. Excuse me. And I'm jumping down to 25 after this. Daniel 8 verse 7. And I saw him come close unto the ram. Right. This specifically is referring to Alexander leading the Greeks. All right. And he was moved with choler. See, that's the point that I wanted, though. That he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram and brake his two horns. There was no power in the ram to stand before him, and he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. All right, so the ram is referring to the Medes and the Persians. All right. But the choler, and we don't really use this word choler much, so I want to look this up so that we can understand what it's talking about. So in an archaic sense, because we're not looking at this definition, because this is talking about we're talking about the Middle Ages. We're not talking about that. We're looking at the archaic sense. Anger or irascibility. Irascibility being a short temper. All right. So anger and being easily moved with your temper. Right. So as it says down here in the Oxford English Dictionary, anger or rage is the definition for choler. All right, proneness to anger, fieriness, ill temper. So when it says that Alexander was moved with choler, he was moved with anger against these non-whites. He was moved with rage against these non-whites, and it's the same spirit that remains within a lot of these Nazis today, all right? A lot of these white supremacists today still have that same choler, still have that same rage, all right? So in Daniel 8 and verse 25, it says, and through his policy, now this is specifically talking about Antiochus Epiphanes, but again, the same spirit remains in these white supremacists today. And through his policy also, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. So with their policies, they're going to try to inflict their perpetual hatred, inflict their choler that they have against the non-whites. That's how these Nazis operate. That's how these white supremacists operate, right? They have this choler, and these days they're not necessarily making war physically. They still do that in some places, but mostly it's through their policies, all right? And he shall magnify himself in his heart, right? So he magnifies himself in his heart. He's very proud. and by peace shall destroy many, right? Through his policy, not necessarily through weapons of war, but through policy, all right? Destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, right? He'd stand against God. He's going to do things that's ungodly. But he shall be broken without hand, right? God's not going to come down and punch him, but them nukes going to come and destroy everything, all right? And again, that's historically, I do need to mention, that's talking about Antiochus Epiphanes. He was destroyed with the disease, all right? So I do want to point that out. But let's get, I don't even want to get Psalms 50 just yet. Well, because it said he would stand against the prince of princes. So we'll read Psalms 50. We will read Psalms 50. All right. So in Psalms 50 and verse 16, it says, "But unto the wicked God saith." So let's deal with the wicked real quick. Yes, there are wicked individuals of every race. I'm not going to say that there aren't. Obviously there are. But when the Bible says wicked, oftentimes it's referring to one people. All right. The Edomites. So in Malachi 1 and, we'll just get to the point in verse 4. "Whereas Edom saith," right, we read about Edom a while ago, same as Mount Seir, same as Esau, "We are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places," right, that's what they said in the Renaissance. "Thus saith the Lord of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down. And they shall call them the border of wickedness," right? And that's literally, even white people today say that the Nazis and white supremacists are the border of wickedness, right? They say that's the most evil, that's the most wicked, and it is. That's the truth, all right? "And the people against whom the Lord hath indignation forever," right? So when the Bible talks about the wicked, yes, in general, anybody who's done wicked things, but specifically the Edomites who come to power, all right, and implement their Nazi agendas, implement their white supremacist agendas, all right? That's the wicked, all right? "But unto the wicked God saith, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes?" Right? Because these people will say they're Christian. They'll say they're Catholic, whatever the case. All right? "Or that thou should take my covenant in thy mouth." So who are you? Being wicked and evil and having a perpetual hatred, who are you to say anything about God? God does not like that. He does not respect that. "Seeing thou hate instruction and cast my words behind thee," right? Because they don't care about the Bible. They don't care about implementing what the Bible says. Like in America, for example, the same people, these same Nazis, white supremacists, they'll be like, well, let's celebrate Christmas. They got a war on Christmas. Well, Christmas is not in the Bible. That has nothing to do with God. That's a pagan tradition. You ain't worried about Hanukkah when that's what the Bible says to do. You ain't worried about the Passover. You worried about Easter. That ain't got nothing to do with God. You see that right there? God said, don't vex or oppress the stranger. Yet you saying kick all the immigrants out of the country. So what is it? Are you for God or not? God said, you definitely not for me, because you cast my words behind you. All right? "When thou saw a thief, then thou consented with him, has been partaker with adulterers," right? So they don't care what you've done. For example, even Trump, he's an adulterer, quite literally. The Stormy Daniels stuff, right? But still, nobody cares because he pushes their same agenda. All right? "Thou give thy mouth to evil, and thy tongue frame deceit," right? Because they'll say, no, we're not racist. Wink, wink, sig heil, right? It's just evil. It's just lies. All right? Verse 20, "Thou sit and speak against thy brother, thy slanders thy own mother's son," right? Because the Mexican people, the Central American people, come from Issachar, the son of Jacob. Jacob and Esau were brothers. All right? They don't care. They don't care about that. They don't care about the relation, the familial relation. They don't care that we're supposed to be family. They have a perpetual hatred. All right? They're moved with choler. So through their policy, they do all sorts of mischief. All right? "Thou sit and speak against thy brother, thou slanders thine own mother's son," right? Saying Mexicans are rapists or whatever. 21, "These things hast thou done, and I kept silence," right? God has not stepped up from his throne yet. God has not returned yet, right? Christ has not returned yet. "Thou thoughtest that I was altogether such a one as thyself," right? Because they picture and they paint God as white, right? They don't think they're going to be judged about how they've been afflicting God's people. They don't think that God's going to judge them for it at all. But I will reprove thee and set them in order before thine eyes, right? God is raising up the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. God is waking up his people, all right? So, from there, let's get Psalms 94. So let's get Psalms 94. And I'm going to start at the top, and I'll jump around a little bit. It says, O Lord God, to whom vengeance belongeth. O God, to whom vengeance belongeth, show thyself. Lift up thyself, thou judge of the earth. Render a reward to the proud. All right? To the proud, similar to the wicked. All right, Obadiah. The whole book of Obadiah is judgment against Esau. All right, so Obadiah, starting with verse 1. It says, the vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom, we have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. All right, so that's World War III. It's all culminating over there in the Middle East. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. All right, so the other nations, they recognize this. That's why they formed BRICS. All right, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they came together and they said, hey, look, we got to stand against the American hegemony. Verse 3, the pride of thy heart had deceived thee. All right, so the pride of Esau has really deceived them. Has really deceived them into thinking that they can battle God, thinking that their reign is going to last forever. The pride of Elon Musk has him thinking he can sig heil in front of everybody and he's going to get away with it. All right? Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, right? Because Mount Sierra was literally a mountain. They was living in the caves in Mount Sierra. That's where they come from. All right? Whose habitation is high. They made skyscrapers to not memorialize. What's the word I'm looking for? To call to remembrance how they used to live in the top of a mountain, right? That's what skyscraper thing is about. That saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? All right. They say, can't nobody take us down. Can't nobody fight against America. Can't nobody invade America. Right? That's what they think. That's what they think. The pride of his heart has deceived thee. And then just to, because it said, who shall bring me down? Verse 4, it says, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, right? The bald eagle is the symbol of America. And though thou set thy nest among the stars, right? With the International Space Station and the space travel. Thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. Like Elon Musk, he said, like, we're going to Mars, right? It's going to be a beautiful day when we step on Mars, right? Has set his nest among the stars. But God said, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. So God said, look, I don't care where you go. I don't think they're going to make it to Mars. But even if they do, God said, look, I'm going to destroy all y'all. It don't matter. I'm going to destroy all this y'all trying to build. It's not of God. God said, I'm going to bring it all down. All right. So, render a reward to the proud. Yes, that's in general, just like the wicked. There are proud people of every race, of course. But specifically, Esau's pride has gone way too far. All right. It's like this ain't proud to be an American, right? Well, at least I know I'm free. Okay. The pride has deceived you, Esau. All right. God's going to render a reward to you. Verse 3, Lord, how long shall the wicked triumph? How long shall they utter and speak hard things, and all the workers of iniquity boast themselves? They break in pieces thy people, O Lord, and afflict thy heritage. All right, so jumping down to verse 12, right? Because the wicked are God's sword. They are afflicting the heritage of God as long as we stay in sin. But if we come out of sin, God will fight for us again. Verse 12 said, blessed is the man whom thou chastenest, O Lord, and teach him out of thy law. So that's what we go out to the streets, we try to do. We try to preach to the people. All right? That thou mayest give him rest from the days of adversity until the pit be digged for the wicked, right? Because when God delivers the righteous, he will also destroy the wicked, the same way he did in ancient Egypt, all right? People we got to realize that there is no salvation of the righteous without the destruction of the wicked. That's just how things work. All right? The same with ancient Egypt. God had to destroy the wicked Egyptians so he could save the righteous Israelites. Same thing here in the last days. God's got to destroy Babylon the Great to deliver his people out of this, global hegemony that they built. All right? Verse 14, for the Lord will not cast off his people, neither will he forsake his inheritance. Right? So people in Christianity that don't teach about the Israelites, why is that? Because God will not cast off his people, ever. So why are y'all not teaching about who God's people are? All right? The so-called blacks, Latinos, and American Indians over here in the West. In the East, it's mostly South Asians and Oceanians, but are dispersed all over the world. All right? Why are we not teaching about who God's people are? It says, but judgment shall return unto righteousness, and all the upright in heart shall follow it. So I want to get this because I have not gotten this verse yet. In Job 9 and 24, I do want to point this out because it said, what did it say? Judgment shall return unto righteousness. Judgment right now is not in the hands of the righteous. All right? The earth right now is not in the hands of the righteous. In Job 9 and 24, it says, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is it? You see that right there? So like Elon Musk, for example, has a crazy amount of pull here in the U.S. because he's in the ear of Donald Trump, the current U.S. president. He basically funded the campaign by himself, even though, there was a lot going on there, I'm sure, as far as funders. But he's also influencing elections in Europe, right? So he is running the earth, basically, one of the richest men in the world, all right? He is wicked. He is the wicked. I pretty much built that case tonight, all right? And said he covered the faces of the judges thereof, right? The judges of the earth, the Israelites. Nobody knows who the Israelites are anymore. It says, if not, where and who is he, right? If it's not these wicked people that you see that are Nazis, white supremacists, ruling the earth now, then who is it, right? If that's not the wicked, then who is it? All right? But it says, but judgment shall return unto righteousness, and all the upright in heart shall follow it, right? That's what the kingdom's going to be like. It's going to be righteous judgment in the earth. Verse 16, who will rise up for me against the evildoers, or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity, right? So that's what David is asking, right? If the Lord's not going to stand up and fight, who will? All right? The Lord's going to be there to deliver us. Verse 17, unless the Lord had been my help, my soul had almost dwelt in silence, right? So he's speaking from the perspective of the Israelites. He said, look, if the Lord had not been our help, then we would have all perished, right? What scripture is that? If the Lord had not been our help, it might be Psalms 124. I may be going off, but I think it's Psalms 124. If the Lord had not been our help, where is that? No, not Job. Y'all forgive me for a second. It's not one that I had in mind, but it's something that just come to mind as far as a precept for that Psalms 94 and 16. If the Lord had not been our help, I think it's Psalm 124. Is that it? Yes. So Psalms 124. It says it a couple times, but specifically here in Psalms 124, that's the one I remembered. It said, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side, now may Israel say, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side when men rose up against us, then they had swallowed us up quick when their wrath was kindled against us. You see that right there. So if it had not been the Lord fighting for us, the wicked, Esau specifically, but also all the heathen who hate God, they would have wiped us out. All right? They would have destroyed us. That we would have been gone years and years ago. All right? Generations and generations ago. I said, then the waters had overwhelmed us. The stream had gone over our soul, right? The waters of the peoples, of the peoples. Then the proud waters had gone over our soul. Again, the pride of the heathen. Blessed be the Lord who hath not given us as prey to their teeth. Our soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken and we are escaped, right? It's referring to salvation. Our help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth, right? So that's what it's talking about in Psalms 94 and 16, that God has been our help. Or verse 17 specifically said, unless the Lord had been my help, my soul had almost dwelt in silence. When I said my foot slippeth, thy mercy, O Lord, held me up. And that's what we all need to pray for more of, is mercy from the Lord. All right? And using that mercy, using that grace effectively to come back to him in the way that he has commanded us to do. And the multitude of my thoughts within me, thy comforts delight my soul. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frame mischief by a law? And that's exactly what they're doing now. It is framing mischief by laws, right? Mischief as in like deportation, for example, all these anti-immigration sentiments that Elon Musk is pushing for in these predominantly Edomite-run countries, all right? So from there, I know we're going a bit long, so this will be the last one I'll pull in Amos. Well, maybe next to last, because in Revelation. Amos 9, maybe Amos 9 will suffice. Starting with verse 8, it said, behold, the eyes of the Lord God are upon the sinful kingdom, and I will destroy it from off the face of the earth. Right, so that would be the U.S. is the modern day sinful kingdom. Saving that I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, saith the Lord. You see that right there. But he is going to save his people. He will save his people from this place. For lo, I will command and I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, like as corn is sifted in a sieve. And that's what happened through the curses of Deuteronomy 28. We were scattered all over the world. Yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth. So God said, look, if you're actually serving him and you have earned salvation, if God has predestined you to salvation, then no one can stop that salvation from occurring. All right, and God will not forget you. All right, when he's delivering people, you won't be forgotten. Verse 10, all the sinners of my people shall die by the sword, which say the evil shall not overtake nor prevent us. Right, so if you think there's some other way to salvation other than following in the ways of Christ, then God's just going to kill you. He said, look, I can't deal with his people. All right, if you think there's some other path to salvation, like if you think a bunker is going to save you when you ain't been keeping no commandments, you ain't been following Christ, all right, it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. All right, he's still going to wipe you out. He said, all the sinners of my people shall die by the sword. All right. In that day, verse 11, in that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen and close up the breaches thereof. And I will raise up his ruins, and I will build it as in the days of old. Right? So during the days of David, the Israelites became a global superpower, unified all 12 tribes together. All right? That's what's going to happen again. That's what's going to happen again. All right? The Israelites will be raised up as the sole and only global superpower. And at the head of that global hegemony, it will be Christ. All right? Jesus, the son of Joseph, being the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. All right? Verse 12, that they may possess the remnant of Edom, and of all the heathen which are called by my name, saith the Lord that doeth this. All right? So he said, look, the Edomites, they're going into captivity. And all the heathen, they're going into captivity. They're going into captivity. Why he specifically say Edom? Because he knew that Edom would be that sinful kingdom here in these last days. All right, as it said in verse 8. All right, verse 13. So that's you, Elon. You're going into captivity. I'm sure you're going to try to find a way to get away from them nukes. And hey, if Christ wants them nukes to get you, then they're going to get you. But if not, you're going into captivity. All right. Verse 13, it says, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that the plowman shall overtake the reaper, and the treader of grapes him that soweth seed. And the mountains shall drop sweet wine, and all the hills shall melt. Everything's going to be flipped back right up. All right. Esau has turned things upside down. Everything's going to be turned right back around on him. Verse 14, and I will bring again the captivity of my people Israel. Meaning he's going to bring us back out of captivity. And they shall build the waste cities, right? All the cities that is going to be destroyed in World War III, guess what? They getting built right back up. It's going to be more glorious than ever. And inhabit them, and they shall plant vineyards and drink the wine thereof. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. Verse 15, here's the point. And I will plant them upon their land. They shall no more be pulled up out of their land, which I have given them, saith the Lord God. So it all boils down to the destruction of the wicked and the salvation of the righteous.